and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Manny Acutiel, and this is Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. Manny's, for those of you that don't know, is a physical place on the corner of 16th and Valencia. And one of our first guests ever, honorably, was Christine Pelosi. And we have Christine back tonight to talk about her book from 2019, what it was like growing up in the Pelosi household, and her predictions for the future and what she thinks, how she thinks about what's going on in DC and in Congress. And we were just chatting about it before this call. Real quick, if you have a question for Christine Pelosi, you can type it into the Q&A box at any time. We're just going to chit chat for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we're going to get to your questions for Christine. She's amazing. She is a wealth of knowledge. Also, if you'd like to tag us, and she's got an amazing book. Can you lift that book up again? Nancy Pelosi, The Nancy Pelosi Way. We're going to be putting it's already in thank you. The operator has put the link in the chat box. Please support your local authors and purchase the book, The Nancy Pelosi Way. The link is in the chat box. If you haven't read it, purchase it and read it. Why don't we just start with that, Christine? So what made you decide to write the book now? Because you've obviously grown up with Nancy Pelosi. You know a lot about her. Why now? Why the book now?
Well, I hadn't planned on writing it at all, Manny, and it's great to see you. I hope to see you again.
Yes.
Soon. We're not physically distanced. Hello, hugs everybody for joining. Virtual hugs for all. As we like to say, physical distancing is an act of profound love. And It's really important that we show the love we have for each other, the love we have for our essential workers, the love we have for our relatives by keeping our distance physically, but socially engaging. So thank you, Manny, for bringing us in. What happened was in about May, I got a call from Simon & Schuster. They said, we're writing a book on women in leadership. We want to write one about your mom. We're writing one about RBG. We're writing one about AOC. Will you help us? And I said, sure, because there are a number of people writing books about her. And so I thought, I always sit for an interview, suggest people for them to talk to, that kind of thing. Then they wrote back a few weeks later and they said, we actually want to have an authorized version of this biography of her, her lessons, because they had a theme.
I see.
The way, the lessons learned from that person. And I said, well, it could be authorized if I'm the author. So I just jumped in.
Right.
And I spent my summer writing it on my iPhone in the notes section. So many people on the chat may know Bella, my 11-year-old, who's very active. So I'd be going to take Bella to the pool or Bella to acting camp or Bella to rehearsal. And while she was at those places, I would be typing on the notes section on my phone. And then at night, I'd go home and upload into the mainframe of my computer, which helped me tell stories and iterations about my mom. I didn't copy her book, her best-selling memoir, because Know Your Power, because she already wrote that and she'll write a sequel to that. Right. And I tried to more use my campaign boot camp style that I've written my first 2 books about, which is like, these are the lessons, these are iterative lessons. So it really came about because somebody wanted a book authorized. So writers out there, if somebody says, okay, can I pick your brain? Yes, for a fee. Yeah. Can you do me a favor? Sure, here's my fee. Know what you're worth, know your power, and get paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't just, if you have a skill and you have knowledge and you have something to give, you should charge for it. A lot of people don't do that, and they should. Tell us, I want to get to the book, but I have some just kind of more general questions, and perhaps you'll get to this in the conversation about the book. Your mother has been speaker twice. She is speaker now. She's the most powerful elected woman in America, again. How do you think she's different this time around?
I think this time around, I'm actually in front of a poster, framed newspaper articles from when the first time she was speaker. This time around, she's like 2.0. She's unplugged. She has no F's to give. They're just gone. The first time around, she was very, very cognizant of the fact that she was a first, it hadn't been done before, and she wanted to make sure that we did 2 things, like counter Bush and prepare for a Democratic president and prepare the legislation and the messaging for the Democratic president to come into sign. So when Barack Obama gets elected and he, on his first day, is signing the Lilly Ledbetter, Fair Pay Act, and he's signing the Recovery Act, and he's signing all these bills, and eventually the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Right. It was because they had been working on that for a couple of years, but she saw herself, I think, still as the party activist, as a party leader in a parliamentary system, and not necessarily as a governmental icon in her own right. This time, I think when you've been there before, you kind of know how to do something already. And also the trappings of power that were awesome the first time, they're not any less awesome. Yeah. But at the same time, she is better at knowing how to utilize them. Like we all saw her wear the mace of the Speaker of the House the day that she gavelled in the impeachment articles, for example.
I love that mace brooch that she wears. It's so great. Is there in history, do you know of any time someone has been elected Speaker of the House and then hasn't been Speaker for a while and then was elected again? Is she the first?
Yes, Sam Rayburn. He had it, he lost, and he came back, but it was shorter. It was a shorter amount of time, and we were hoping it was just a swing. We would win in 2012. So in 2010, the last day they were in session, they passed the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So the last day that Congress was in session, she signed the bill that ended military discrimination. Our own Zoe Dunning from San Francisco was at the signing ceremony, as were others. And so I said to the staff, okay, I want a constituent service. I want the flags that are hanging over the Capitol, because I figured I would store them for 2 years and then we'd put them back up. Right. But we waited and waited and waited and waited. But finally, 8 years later, longer interval than I thought, we put them back up, flew them again, and then I surprised her when she had her community swearing in by Mimi Silbert at Delancey Street. I said, there. Oh, and this flag.
I was there.
Remember that? I said it flew 8 years ago, and it flew for a second time last week. So that part was very exciting. She knew her purpose, knew what she wanted to do. And again, I think that, and all that time she represented San Francisco. So she had all the churning of the new energy that comes into San Francisco and the new ideas that were bubbling up. So, San Francisco politics keeps you fresh.
Yeah. Yes. Tell me about that. Why does it keep you fresh? You are, fresh. You and your whole family have been at the epicenter of San Francisco politics for decades. What's unique about our politics, do you think?
I think what's unique about our politics is that everybody says, oh, mine's the toughest politics. You go to Congress, there's 435 members. They all think they've got it really tough. But we know in San Francisco, there's a certain value that we have on diversity and inclusion. It means you have to listen to everybody. You have to hear from everybody all the time, constantly. And you really can't take that personally. Like in other places, if you just don't want to talk to the other side, like you don't really have to. Yeah. I mean, I think that's less true now because of social media. But I think what's great about San Francisco politics is that we are so many things in one city. We're a multi-industry city. Yeah. So it's not just like, we only have Capitol, or we only have film, or we only have, art. We have everything here. And I also think that because this city prides itself on grooming national leadership and being the ideas incubator for the country and in fact the world, I think that if you're going to get through California politics, you got to get through San Francisco first. And to get through San Francisco, I think you really have to have constantly an open heart, an open mind, and accept that you're going to have to be working in what Nancy Pelosi calls the kaleidoscope of politics. We may only agree on one thing, but we're going to work that thing really hard. And then, tomorrow we could be protesting each other and on the opposite side of something. But we have to stay respectful enough so that on the third day, we have a different coalition brewing. And I think San Francisco has more of those, shall we say, unexpected coalitions than almost any other city. And I think that's also why the politics is tougher here, but the leaders are so much stronger because they've been steeled. through this fire of this
They've been
activist
vetted.
passion.
They've been vetted. Hey, what was she like as a mom before she got into politics?
Well, you know, she's similar. She's still the same now. She was really, really a hands-on mom. We had back in the day, see now moms and dads are roaming through their houses on their smartphone. But back in the day, we had a phone that was right in the kitchen, right next to the laundry machine. So she'd like start at the base of the phone, like, you know, get on a call, put in the laundry, then go around the kitchen. Then she'd like pull this super, super, super long cord to an inch of its life, kind of patrolling the whole first floor of the house, making sure people were doing what they were supposed to be doing and not doing what they weren't supposed to be doing. We were 5 kids born in 6 years and 1 week. So everybody was always fighting somebody. There was always one of those San Francisco coalitions forming, and you could have a different, you have 3 on 2 and 4 on 1 and 5 against her and 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 at any hour of the day. So she kind of had to stay flexible, but she was like, we went to all the girls went to, 4 girls went to Convent of the Sacred Heart, and my brother went to town school. Now my kids go to public school because I definitely didn't want to take them through the Catholic school experience, wonderful as it was. But Catholic school, the nuns were like, press your uniform, do your homework, shine your shoes.
Wow.
People who grew up here at the time knew that you had to wear like white polished shoes. Like, who thinks kids should wear white polished shoes, right?
White polished shoes.
Testing your devotion to Jesus, right? How polished your shoes would be. So needless to say, she, every night, okay, we'd have dinner. Then you'd set up breakfast. Then you make sure you'd have the bath and done your homework and laid out your uniform and laid out all your stuff. The next morning you'd make breakfast. You'd have an assembly line lunch, give you money, 5 cents on the muni. We took the 55 Sacramento and transferred out to 3 Jackson. Oh, 5 cents. So a quarter took everybody on the bus. And then, and it was different. Like I was 9 and taking my filmmaker sister, Alexandra, who was 5, like I would take her on the bus. Like now you can't imagine a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old on muni. Good luck. But, you know, then it was, that's just what we did. And she was a class mom. She made our costumes. We had, you know, cookies when we got home from school, take the uniform off, do the homework, do the routine. So she was very hands-on. She knew our friends, and she took us with her when she volunteered in politics, but she always thought she'd be a volunteer. She never thought that she would run for public office.
So before, what part of town did you all grow up in, by the way?
We grew up by the Presidio. So we spent, ironically enough, we spent like almost every day at JK Park. I say ironically enough because later she'd go to Congress and help save the Presidio. But we never could have imagined that when we were 5 kids on jungle gyms. And, you know, our sort of family lore was us. She would be like, unless someone's bleeding or like there's a broken bone, you play rough, you get hurt. I don't want to hear it.
I love it. So, do you remember, was there a moment where she had like a family meeting to tell you all that she was going to go from a volunteer in politics to run for office?
Well, not when she ran for party office. She just kind of did it.
Yeah.
But when she ran for political office, you know, public office, Sala Burton was a good friend of ours. We had worked on Sala's campaign. I had worked as a teenager for Phil Burton up there. Behind me, I have a little name tag that says, I'm Christine Pelosi and I'm working for Phil Burton. Like I still have it from when I was a teenager. So Sala had cancer, and she said, I'm not going to run in 88. Now this is January of 87. So she'd just been sworn in and said, well, this is my last term. I'm not going to run again. I'm just going to fight this cancer, do this work. I have some things I want to do legislatively, but and she said, Nancy, I want you to run. And my mom had been state chair of the party, put on the Democratic Convention in 1984, which I talk about in the book, but has special resonance now because it was all happening at the time of AIDS. And just as we're seeing now with the API community bearing the brunt of discrimination vis-a-vis Corona, it was the LGBTQ community, then the gay lesbian community, self-identified, that was bearing the brunt of this institutionalized bigotry, which of course prolonged the quest for cure. But they had the convention anyway. They brought the convention out despite this new disease that people thought they might be able to get. Then she had helped, she ran and lost for the DNC. for you party insiders. Her campaign was, among other things, she was against superdelegates, and the superdelegates didn't want to give up their new powers, so they didn't vote for her. But then she helped the Senate, the Democrats win back the Senate in 1986. So Sala said, you know the issues, you know the people, you've gotten all these thousands of volunteers to work for the party and the convention, but also you just helped win the Senate. So these chairmen know who you are, so you could be effective from San Francisco. And it was a really, 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 strong family conversation. But Alexandra, my sister, said to her mother, get a life.
What?
And so she did. That was an expression back in those days. You're obviously not a Gen Xer. You don't know.
No, I'm a millennial. What does that mean, get a life? Exactly.
It was the expression then. It was sort of like, oh my God, go do something with yourself.
Yeah, go do it.
Go do it.
What is she like now? I mean, does she check in a lot? Like, how busy
she
is
checks in a lot.
House? Like, if you wanted to get in touch with her, is she like, can you text her? Like, how? Your mom's the Speaker of the fucking House. Like, what is that relationship like? I mean, she's saving millions of lives right now with her.
She is, and yet at the same time, she's like, she checks in with the grandchildren. She has a very strong texting emoji game. We have the family chats.
No,
we'll send her stuff.
What's a classic Nancy Pelosi emoji?
She has a lot of there's a lot of hearts. It's a lot of hearts and smiles. But she'll be like, I'm on a plane, and there's a little flight, or or she's at work. She might do a flag, but it's mostly like hearts and whatever is topical to the conversation. So of course, like my nephews are like, oh my God, my grandmother's sending me emoji texts. I'm so embarrassed. But I'm like, it's kind of cute.
Yeah, that is cute. Are you super proud of her right now? I mean, what she's doing, how she's jujitsuing these stimulus bills to actually help the people who need helping is so San Francisco of her. And I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about how you feel about the work she's doing right now.
Well, it's the work that we all prepared for. I mean, all of us who worked from literally 2 days after, Trump was declared the president-elect, and we got on the phone with people and started, reviving the Faces of Care coalition that had been used to pass the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, to say we have to save it. Now, we knew, like, okay, if Hillary won, we'd have to worry about the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland, remember him? Yes. And staffing, and we wanted to make sure that the Republicans didn't do TPP on their way out. We didn't want that trade bill. We knew if Trump won, we had to save the Affordable Care Act. We had to go at he wasn't going to be a problem with TPP, but he was going to be a problem with personnel and with healthcare. So we started that right away on the phone with the activists, and ever since then, for 3.5 years, at least a couple times a month, she's on the phone with grassroots activists, hearing the raw stories from people. And sometimes they're really, really raw. And that's another thing, this is your other question, what's she like Speaker this time versus last time? Yeah. This time, it's, there's no, of course, she's always getting information from staff and consultants and pollsters and stuff, but she's like, no, I want the raw story. I want to know right from the people. I don't want this filtered by staff, because I'm going to get a filter anyway, and then I'm going to compare it to the raw story, and then I'm going to suss out the truth. So all the work that we did to protect the Affordable Care Act, to have those 10,000 grassroots events, all the work that people did, including thousands of San Franciscans who came into our fabulous Red to Blue headquarters on Castro Market, which we reopen as soon as it's safe. All the people that were swing left and sister district and indivisible and unions and coalitions of various kinds, all the work we did to elect that Congress is now paying off, because now she's on the phone with all of those Democratic members, taking the temperature, constantly getting ideas. If anything, they're saying push harder, push harder, push harder. So I would say that she's able to do it because we gave her the kind of caucus that would really, really push. And, the occupier of the White House even knows that like, it's like, look, these people are not going to give up. These people were elected to address and protect healthcare. We're in the middle of a health pandemic. They're not going to give up until they see some help. So it's still not as good as it could be. But what I like about the job that she's doing is that even though she's racking up these wins, she's still listening to people in really raw and painful tearful terms, cry out that it's not enough. And she says, okay, well, let's organize. How can we turn that yearning into something concrete, whether it's paycheck protection, whether it's, rent relief, whether it's just saying to the banks, look, take these mortgages and don't do like a furlough for 3 months and make me pay 4 months rent 4 months from now, add 3 months to the end of the mortgage term, right? I mean, like, be creative in ways that real people can relate. So I would say I'm really proud of the work she's doing, but I also know that she's able to do it because of all the work that we did to give her the caucus that she needed.
Right. So my last question, and then if you have questions for Christine, now's the time to type it in, is you wrote a book called The Nancy Pelosi Way. What is the Nancy Pelosi Way? Well,
and Amazon has it on a special this month, so you can buy it for $2.
$2
on your Kindle. $2. I wouldn't have pitched the full buck. We're in the middle of a recession, but for $2, you can get the electronic version. But the way is basically her lessons. Know your power. Claim your seat at the table. Be so confident in your message and in your talent that you bring other people with you. When my mom first got to Congress, there were 12 Democratic women and 11 Republican women. Now there are over 100 women, 90 of whom are Democratic women, because she made a decision to bring in more. And I chair the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus. We talk all the time about the fact that we're not going to be crabs in the barrel. We're going to be intersectional. We're going to add women of color. We're going to add people to make the policy who come from the communities affected by the policies. And so her way is to say, at the time they would say, oh, just be quiet. When she first ran for leadership, they said, who said she could run? That's what they said, because they had a pecking order of dudes and they didn't want a woman interfering with that. And then they said, well, why don't you give us a list of the things you want and we'll do them for you? And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do them myself. So her way is to constantly attract support, understand that criticism and effectiveness go hand in hand. If you're good at something, they say, oh, we were going to do that anyway. Or they'll say, if you were good at that, why can't you be good at the thing I want you to do? And you have to just, accept that and grow it. But I'd say for most of us, there are still too many of us who are still the only one at the table, the only woman, the only LGBT person, the only immigrant, the person with disability, et cetera. And what we have to do is make sure that we're representing everyone else who's not there, because it always falls to the other to represent all the others.
Right.
And also look at what happened today. They did an enrollment ceremony, a signing ceremony for the bill. And one of the things that Speaker Pelosi said was, look at the diversity that wrote this bill. Maxine Waters, first African-American woman to ever head the Financial Services Commission. Nydia Velasquez, Puerto Rican, first Hispanic woman to ever head a committee, and she had a small business. So when you have women who are from communities of color, who represent them, who are trying to explain what being underbanked or unbanked actually means to people like the Treasury Secretary, and succeeding, again, it's you support those people on the way in, you give them a seat at the table, you give them a seat at the head of the table at the gavel. So that's her way. And what she'll often tell us, as she did just about an hour ago, was we don't agonize, we organize, we unionize, and we keep building power.
Amazing. All right, let's get to some of these questions. And thank you for answering mine, Christine. Aiden, how do you see local leaders best applying the Nancy Pelosi way on their level?
Build coalitions. It's all the same. It's all the same level. There's no such thing as a job that's too big or a job that's too small. It's all grassroots politics. And so what she would say is, know your grassroots down to the last blade of grass, know your neighbors, what they care about, what their aspirations are, what their challenges are, and figure out ways of common ground and of connecting them to other people who need their support. All you're doing at the federal level is just amplifying your local grassroots. So right. it doesn't change the higher up you go in your work. And in fact, getting into the habits when you're at an electorally lower level of politics, of always being open, keeping your word, being responsive, doing the casework. Do the casework of your office.
Yeah.
You got to do your politics, you got to be performative. That's all interesting, but you're hired to do a job, and the first thing you have to do is to do that job. And if you do that, then people will trust you to do a bigger job.
Got it. Mzungu, how can we both support Nancy's leadership on so many issues, gun control, mass incarceration, immigration, while still pushing her to be more fully supportive of an even more progressive agenda, especially the Great New Deal?
I think that there's two things. One is, actually we were talking about, because Earth Day was yesterday.
Yes.
It's Earth Week.
Earth Week.
An ironic time, because I think that the pandemic has been in part exacerbated by pollution and global warming. And at the same time, the Earth, without humans causing so much smog, is healing in little ways. So it's a weird time to be talking about this. But one of the things she was talking about tonight is, to a young woman who reported in on, their support for the Green New Deal, she said, sit down with labor, because you have to do it together. Yeah. I wrote the first Green New Deal resolution actually 3 years ago at the DNC. And they were like, oh, you can't use that because that will be that term, because that's going to be a term that will come up in the presidential race. And I was like, well, okay, I thought it was like Green FDR, like how controversial is that? But it became something more controversial than I think it needed to be. But the answer is sit down and talk to people. People from industrial and indigenous and frontline communities need to be sitting together at the table. And, just one quick story on that, actually out of New York. I worked for Governor Cuomo when he was the housing secretary. I've been against fracking for years. And I have friends in New York who tried for years and years and years to convince him to do a ban on fracking. First, he did a moratorium, and then it was like, we're going to do a study. And weirdly enough, in the middle of this pandemic, it happened to be that the timing lapsed, and now fracking is banned in New York. Probably wouldn't have happened absent this crisis, but now it's happening. So also look for creative ways to build a broader discussion. Or, as I said, when a tragedy comes along, say, now, doesn't this tell you that we should push harder for this thing that we wanted?
Got it. We have time for, I think, 2 more quick questions. Susan Pfeiffer, the inimitable, the incredible Susan Pfeiffer asks, how many of the freshman class women House members are now subcommittee chairs?
Oh, she already knows the answer. That's Susan Pfeiffer. She already knows that the answer is 10 women with gavels. Yes. And one quick example, one of them is Deb Haaland, one of the first Native American women elected to Congress. Amazing. And she's the head of the subcommittee on public lands. So imagine a Native woman.
Perfect.
First one, she and Sharice Davids elected at the same time. But after 200 years, the first Native American women, and one of them is holding a gavel, having jurisdiction over Native and sacred lands that are, by the way, being pillaged by this president.
Amazing. So incredible. And both of them, both Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland, are so incredible. And the final question, which I think is a great question to end on, is Susan Barber asks, what is your favorite childhood memory of your mother?
Okay. I would say, first of all, when I have birthday parties, my mom's favorite thing is to tell childhood stories about me. So it's like her favorite thing. It's actually pretty funny. Of like, when I was a little kid, she'll tell this or that story. I think my favorite childhood memory of my mom is probably the times when she would hang up the phone after unwinding it from that super long cord and hang it back up, and she would just dance wildly around the kitchen. She loves music. She loves concerts. And she would always, always, always dance. She's not a good singer, but she doesn't let that stop her. She's a great dancer, and she always dances. And I would say the follow-up to that is, when we were young, we always danced to like disco and stuff. And then little could we have known that last year my mom would be rocking out with Cher at the Kennedy Center. The two of them dancing together while Cher was getting honored. My mom was sitting in the president's box, and I'm like, man, she used to dance around our kitchen to the Sonny and Cher show, and now she's rocking it with Cher.
What an incredible life. And you're an incredible part of the community, and your mother, of course, we're all so proud of her. And I'm so proud that she is my congresswoman, that she represents me so well in Congress. Real quick, I just want to point people to the link above my head, joinit.org/o/Manny's. Also, it's in the chat box. We're asking all these conversations are free, and they're a service to the public. We do ask people if they're comfortable and able to consider becoming a sponsor of Manny's, my small business, to help us through this recovery. Christine's mom is doing everything she can to help this recovery and help small businesses like mine, but it's going to be tough, even with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. And so we're asking your help to become a sponsor of Manny's. Again, it's $36 a month, and it allows us to be a community-funded space. So thank you for considering that. You can also go in the chat box to become a sponsor and to buy Christine Pelosi's book, which is on sale. The Amazon link is in the chat box. Please click it, buy it, $2. Can't get better than that. And Christine, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done. And thank you to my team here, Sam, Ram, and Manny's, for making this call happen. All right.
Thank you so much. And really, to everybody out there who's struggling, we have resistance, we have recovery, and we have resilience. And we know that San Francisco is a city of resilience. So we will get through this together.
Thanks, Christine. You're the best.
Thank you.